I want to give you a section of the Dhammapada in which he talks about who is the true Brahmin. So the Brahmin is think of the Brahmin meaning not a priest or something, but a person born into a certain level of society. Who is the true Brahmin? The person who, because of their social position, are regarded as somehow better. Or the person who is kindly, compassionate, patient, helpful to others, and so on. Who is the real Brahmin here? So that's what this section is about. One who has laid down the rod in dealing with beings, moving or still, who neither kills nor causes to kill, him I call a Brahmin. Lay down the rod obviously means that it's not using aggression against others or threatening aggression. Neither kills nor causes to kill. And of course, within the Buddhist context, that's not just about killing human beings, it's about killing even insects. And I think we've only recently realized that we kill insects willy-nilly at our peril. One who is not hostile among the hostile, at peace among those who wield the rod. That is the real triumph these days. When we see hatred and aggression, divisiveness arising around politics and religion and so on, and race and gender. If one opposes that, or one at least doesn't agree with it, isn't that a challenge? There's always a danger that one replies to hostility with hostility. And to do that is actually just to lose the plot entirely, because then one is making matters worse rather than better. So how one does that, how one remains non-hostile amongst the hostile, is really quite a challenge. And another thing I did, it's been a very busy week, the thing I did earlier this week was to talk at length to somebody who is interested in teaching mindfulness within that context for younger people especially who are engaged in, what's it called now? Extinction Rebellion, because it is very stressful, of course, to protest about anything. And it becomes even more stressful when one is protesting and one is meeting aggression, abuse, and so on. Because there's nothing that the other apparent side would like more than for one to start behaving the same way as they are. Then when one's moral standing is seriously damaged. So, one who is not hostile among the hostile is a true Brahmin, at peace amongst those who wield the rod. These days the rod turns out to be nuclear weapons. Unclinging among the clinging, him I call a Brahmin. One from whom passion, ill will, pride and hypocrisy have been let drop, like a mustard seed from a needle's point, him I call a Brahmin. Why does he use that phrase, like a mustard seed from a needle's point? Well, it must have been a phrase that was used at that time, meaning, I think, very gently, how to protest gently, rationally, and not being damaged by it, not suffering from it, is like balancing a mustard seed on a needle. There are some signs of there being a kind of shift actually in protest these days. If we see that in Hong Kong you had hundreds of thousands of people protesting. To this day, not a single person has been killed, which you could not have said some decades ago. Of course, things may still change, But for that number of people to be protesting and counted by police and other authorities, for no one to have lost their lives, when you think about it, it's quite a remarkable thing. Many years ago, I went on the march against the intention to bomb Iraq, and there were upwards of 1 million people on the streets, and we were all walking together. But then the thing that struck me then, maybe this is a good sign, is again, no one was actually hurt. There was no one throwing bricks at policemen or anything so stupid. It was a peaceful march. I know that you may say, yes, but actually the war went ahead. Yes, but every good act does have its consequences, and like every bad act, and sometimes the consequences are not immediately apparent. Maybe the world is changing in some ways for the better. Who knows? We just have to keep on doing what we're doing. So one who utters speech that isn't rough but instructive and truthful, so that he offends no one, him I call a Brahmin. Now anyone who is involved in anything social, including teaching meditation, knows that it is almost impossible to offend no one, because there are people who want to be offended. Other people who, all of us in fact, who have egos, who will want to protect that. So going through a life offending no one, I think what it means, of course, is without the intention to offend anyone. But whatever the intention, people will get offended. So what do you do in those circumstances? Again, the one who knows how to handle that, him I call a Brahmin. That is, one with true nobility. One who in this world takes nothing that is not given, whether long or short, tiny, great, fair or foul, him I call a Brahmin. Probably a good place to stop. But I think the message is pretty clear. And archaic though it is actually relevant to our, perhaps especially relevant to our times, given the extent of divisiveness and hatred and protest going on at the moment, and the rise of populism and dictatorship, all very challenging. We can go one of two ways. There's people who don't want to see more war. And that is, do we become like them, or can we behave differently to change things? The big question, and how? So that may be 2,500 years old, but it's still relevant today, and it's food for thought for all of us. How to be a noble one. Noble isn't a word that we use a lot, which is a reflection on our language actually. A lot of ethical words like honour, integrity, have seemed to drop out of the language. What does that mean, that such words drop out of the language? I don't know. The word noble has kind of dropped out. Maybe it sounds a little pompous or something. Or maybe because of its association with authority and power that we hesitate to use that term now. But the Buddha was talking about nobility of spirit, nobility of heart. So it's still a good word for us to use today, I think.